all 6 trig functions for 45 degrees. So we're going to find 45 on our unit circle. So unit circle, I already kind of copied and pasted that piece of the unit circle. So this is what we're working with here. Now, the thing about the 45s is that because this is based on the 45, 45, 90 triangle, it's isosceles, the x and y values are the same, okay? So sine and cosine, they're both positive and they're both the same. So let's go ahead and list our cosine and sine. So cosine of 45 degrees equals root 2 over 2. Sine of 45 degrees equals root 2 over 2. Now, who's the sister to cosine? So because sine and cosine are the same, cosecant and secant will also be the same. So how do we find the secant? Remember, secant is the sister to cosine. What do we do with our answer? Who remembers? Flip it. So I'm going to take this root 2 over 2 and I'm going to write it as 2 over root 2. Now, when I flip it, though, I run into a problem. Got a square root. And how do we get rid of that? Multiply top and bottom by the square root. So that is going to give us 2 root 2 over the square root of 4, because 2 times 2 is 4, but 4 is a perfect square. And what is the square root of 4? What's the square root of 4? 2. So that leaves me with 2 root 2 over 2. Can I do anything else? What do you think? I can cancel the 2's. On the outside, 2 divided by 2 is 1. So my final answer for the secant of 45 is positive root 2. Now, we don't need to go through the same steps for cosecant, because the cosecant of 45 is going to be the same as the secant. So it's root 2. Now, lastly, we have tangent and cotangent. Now, remember, tangent of 45 is going to equal the sine of 45 divided by the cosine of 45. So that means I'm going to take root 2 over 2 and divide that by root 2 over 2. But what do we know about dividing two numbers that are the same? What's 5 divided by 5? 1. What's 10 divided by 10? So because I'm dividing the same thing, root 2 over root 2 over 2 over root 2 over 2, I'm going to get what? 1. And the cotangent of 45, that's the cosine of 45 divided by the sine of 45. So that would be, again, root 2 over 2 divided by root 2 over 2. And that would also give you 1. So my answers, because we're in quadrant 1, everything is positive in quadrant 1. Everything is positive. So I have my cosine, my sine, my secant, my cosecant, my tangent, my cotangent. Any questions? What you think? Okay, we're going to keep practicing. Let's do another one. Copy this down. 150. So now we're moving over to what quadrant? 2. What's negative in quadrant 2? Cosine. So cosine, we're actually going to fill this in. But quadrant 2, cosine is negative. And actually, I'm going to show you a little trick on how to remember what's positive as you go around. We'll talk about that after this one. All right, so let's go ahead. 150 degrees, that's right here. Remember, cosine is your x-coordinate. Sine is your y-coordinate. So we have the cosine of 150, and then I have the sine of 150. I always start with cosine. I don't know why. I just do. All right, so what's the cosine of 150? Looking at the ordered pair. So this is my x and y. X is negative root 3 over 2. So my cosine would be negative root 3 over 2. Sine is what? Positive 1/2. Good. All right, so after I do cosine and sine, then I go to the sisters. Secant and cosecant. So let's do secant. Secant of 150 is the reciprocal of cosine. So it's negative 2 over root 3. But we have a problem. We cannot leave a square root in our denominator, so go ahead and multiply it out. So we're multiplying top and bottom by the square root of 3. So that's going to give us negative 2 root 3. So 3 times 3 is 9. And what's the square root of 9? 3. Can I reduce that any further? Nope. That's my secant. For cosecant, we're going to flip the sign. So instead of 1 over 2, it flips to 2 over 1, which is the same as 2. So now we have our first 4. And then we have tangent. Tangent is equal to sine divided by cosine. And the way I remember that is cotangent, cosine is first. That's how I remember it. So if it's a cotangent, then I know cosine is going to be in the top. So the sine of 150 degrees, we said, is 1/2. So I have 1/2 divided by negative root 3 over 2. We do our keep, change, flip. So we're going to keep the 1/2, change that to multiplication, flip that to a negative 2 over root 3. And what can I cancel out? You can cross cancel what out? The 2's. So that's going to give you a negative 1 over the square root of 3. Go ahead and rationalize that.
How is 1 still negative?
So I multiplied it.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So we know that, and I'm going to actually talk about that after we finish this example. So when we multiply top and bottom by the square root of 3, we get negative root 3 over 3. And that would be our tangent. Now let's do our cotangent. So cotangent, that equals cosine divided by sine. So cosine is negative root 3 over 2. We're going to divide that by positive 1/2. Go ahead, do your keep, change, flip. And when you do that, you get negative root 3 over 2 times 2 over 1. The 2's will cancel again. But this time, my radical is in the numerator. I'm left with just negative root 3 over 1, which is just a negative root 3. And that would be all 6. Any questions? What you all thinking so far as we're starting to work with our unit circle? Okay, take out your unit circle real quick. Yes. No, that's what makes it strange, right? Because you would think that cosecant and cosine would be sisters. No. Sine is the sister to cosecant, and cosine is the sister to secant. So if you look back at what I had you all glue down on your notebooks, these are sisters. These are resistors. These are sisters. They're reciprocals. Okay, so take out your unit circle. Let's talk about the positive and negative. Now, you don't need to fill this out when you do your unit circle quiz, but it is important that you understand what is positive and what is negative in every quadrant, okay?
So blank one or
Just the one you filled out already, yeah. So do you see in the corners where it says positive, negative in all four corners? Do you all see that on your unit circle? And we left that blank. Okay, let's talk about that. So on your unit circle, this is your unit circle, you have positive, negative. And then over here you have positive. I'm just setting it up since I don't have the actual unit circle. Well, I do, but I just don't feel like pulling it up. Positive, negative. Okay, so there's an acronym that a lot of people use to help you remember what is positive in every quadrant. So it's all students take calc. So if you remember the phrase, all students take calc, that can help you remember what is positive. Okay, so what this means is that in quadrant 1, everything is positive. All is positive. The A stands for all. So positive, all. Negative, nothing. In quadrant 2, the S stands for sine. So what's positive in quadrant 2 is sine. And who do we say the sister to sine was? Who's the sister to sine? Cosecant. Those two are positive. Everything else is negative. So that means that cosine is negative. Let me write that in a different color. Hold on. So negative would be cosine. The sister to cosine, which is who? Secant. Tangent is negative, and the sister to tangent is who? Cotangent. So you might want to write that because this will help you, because soon we're gonna talk about this. We just haven't got there yet. So what do you think the T stands for in quadrant 3? Tangent. So the T for take, that represents tangent. Tangent is positive. And the sister is positive. That's all that's positive. What's negative? Everything else. So that means that cosine, secant, sine, cosecant. That's all going to be negative. Go ahead, fill that in on your unit circle.
And it's just for clarification of finding the cosine, sines.
It's just knowing what is positive in which quadrant. Only what's positive. That's it. Because you're going to do, like in 6.3, you're going to have to figure out what quadrant we're in. And knowing what's positive in each quadrant will help you do that. All right. So what do you think the C stands for? not cotangent, cosine. Cosine, and who's the sister to cosine? Secant. That's what's positive. Negative will be sine, cosecant, tangent, and cotangent. So in 6.3, you will have to name the quadrant. So I'll give you 2 clues, and you'll have to use those 2 clues to figure out which quadrant we're in. And what I'm going to do is tell you the sign of 2 different ratios. Okay, so this is really important. Just remember, all students take calc, and then we'll practice with this a little bit more. All right, let's go to our next example. Go ahead and copy down 4. And then I'm going to give you a couple minutes to try to do this on your own. So this time, instead of giving you the angle, I gave you the coordinate. So it says if angle P is XY, that's a point on the unit circle. So P is an angle. Find the exact value of the 6 trig ratios. So remember, if it's on the unit circle, X is always going to be what? What is X? Cosine. And Y is going to be your sine. So with those 2, you can find the other 4. All right, go ahead, take a few minutes, work through it, and then we'll go through it together. What quadrant do you think we're in? Quadrants 1, 2, 3, or 4? 1. How do you know we're in quadrant 1? Both positive. Good. So that's helpful, so we know everything, every single answer should be positive. It seems intimidating, but it's really not.
Yeah, so you still got to do some just going around.
All right, who's finished with all 6? Who's ready to find the answers, compare it? All right, so let's take a minute and you can compare your answers. So for cosine, and I put angle P. Now Elijah he went to the unit circle and realized that we are talking about a 60-degree angle. But even if you don't know that, we could just put an angle P. Angle P is actually 60 though. So cosine is 1/2, secant is 2. Sine is √3/2. Cosecant is 2√3/3. Thank you. Tangent is √3, and cotangent is √3/3. Okay, so we're going to end there. So we can I'm going to give you a few minutes to look at your unit circle, and then we're going to do our first unit circle test.